Hashem tells us in this week's Parsha, Som tasim alecha melech. When you come into the land of Israel that Hashem is giving you, appoint for yourself a king. And then he provides the rules. Who must this king be? From what tribe must he be? What are his rules? What can he do? What can't he do? Does he have any special restrictions or perhaps privileges? So this is called the mitzvah of Minui HaMelech, appointing the king. Now we move to a very famous passage in the book of Samuel. Samuel was the last of the Shoftim, the last of the judges. He was a great prophet also that led the Jewish people in the era before the kings. And when Shmuel was already becoming a more senior person, so delegates came from the nation and said to him, we would like a king like all of the nations round about. And Samuel was very, very upset about this. And he went to Hashem and he complained to Hashem, and Hashem said, don't worry, it's not you that they're rejecting, it's me that they're rejecting. But okay, we'll give them a king and go tell them that. And Shmuel went to them and he criticized them and he rebuked them and he said, but you'll have a king. There'll be problems with this king, but you'll have a king. And he anointed as the king, King Saul from the tribe of Benjamin. Unfortunately, Saul had a very tragic end, and he was killed in warfare. He was actually committed suicide in warfare. And then later on it was King David. But the famous questions that's asked by pretty much all of the commentators is, why was Samuel so upset? All the Jewish people wanted to do was fulfill what it says in the Torah. The Torah says, Som tasim alecha melech. You have to appoint a king. That's exactly what they were doing. They'd come into the land of Israel. In fact, they'd been there for several hundreds of years. They had been led by Shoftim, which were judges, but they were perhaps not with the same power as kings. Perhaps they didn't rule the entire nation. Perhaps it was only some tribes. And now they were coming and they were saying, it's time to appoint a king. We need a king to lead us, like all of the nations. So what was it that they did so wrong? What was the point? And there are many different theories about this. One very fascinating theory is that of the Abarbanel. The Abarbanel, who was a great sage who lived in Spain and in fact was the finance minister to Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand when the Jewish people were exiled in 1492. In his commentary to the Torah, Abarbanel writes that there is no mitzvah to appoint a king. All the Torah means in this week's parasha is that if you want a king, then these are the rules that the king must follow. But actually having a king is not a good thing. And he says, why is having a king not a good thing? He says, because there is no sense of transparency and there's no sense of accountability when it comes to a king. A king is appointed, he's appointed for life, his child takes over from him, and therefore there's no sense of accountability. He says that if you have a leader that is appointed by the people, okay, in those days there was no democracy, but let's call it a democratically appointed leader, he is only appointed for a term. And because he's only appointed for a particular term, he has to be on his toes and he has to be accountable to the people. So the Abarbanel was very far ahead of his time in feeling that there is in fact not a mitzvah to appoint a king. To have a monarchy is not ideal for Judaism and would be better if we had other types of leaders. Perhaps one of the reasons why the Abarbanel said this is because he had such difficult experiences with kings and queens. He worked with them and he knew that perhaps it wasn't the best system. But there is an interesting answer given by the Kli Yakar in his commentary to the Torah. And the Kli Yakar says, you know what, there is a mitzvah to appoint a king. But you have to look very carefully at the wording of the Torah. The wording of the Torah says, Som tasim alecha melech. Take the king and place him over you. He is the king. He has authority. He has power. He is in charge of you. And if you accept his authority and his power, he can lead the nation. But when the Jewish people came to Samuel, they didn't phrase it like that. They said, give us, Tznu, give us the king. We're going to be in charge of the king. We're going to be over the king. Oh, that's not a king. That's a puppet. That's just a puppet. And that's not the type of king that the Torah is speaking about. Sure, the king has got to have incredible character traits. He's got to be honest. He's got to have integrity. He's got to be a great leader. He's got to be somebody who's committed to the Torah. But once he has all of those particular requirements and all of those character traits, then he has to be your king and you have to accept him and his authority is over you. But you can't have somebody who is just a puppet. And that's what they wanted. And the Kli Yakar was somewhat of a social commentator. He ends his commentary by saying, it's a pity that this is what happens today in the rabbinical world. He says that rabbis are just appointed for a short amount of time and that they're always there at the suffering, as it were, of the congregants, and they can be removed at any time. So therefore, they always have to beg and scrape and plead with their congregants because they know that they could be pushed aside. He says that's not the proper thing. Once a person has got the right qualities, accept his authority over you. He is the boss. He is in charge. He will lead you. But if you don't give him the ability to lead, he will never lead. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.